Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking great big smallmouth. We're talking the top baits that we use this time of year to specifically target those big fish. And one of the neat things about smallmouth is that it's not always giant baits. You can do it with some really simple options too. We arrived up here in Michigan a few days ago. We rented a little cottage up here. Some of my family flew in and we're just up here on vacation. We're having a good time. If you guys have been paying attention the last few videos, I've been talking finesse, thinking finesse, starting to talk about big smallmouth. That's because I knew we were coming up here, and chasing those big smallmouth is one of those things that Tactical Bassin, not just me, all of us love doing in the spring. It's one of our favorite traditions. Great big smallmouth, they can be caught in the south, they can be caught in the west, but these northern smallmouth are special. One of the things I love about them is they're behind schedule with the rest of the country. So down south, we're talking spawn, post-spawn. Up here, you're talking pre-spawn, maybe just getting into the spawn. And that is really fun. So targeting big smallmouth, and actually you can take this same information if you live on a highland reservoir, so a clear water fishery, you can apply this to largemouth and spotted bass too. But specifically smallmouth, they love to feed in the springtime. When those fish come up out of the deep water, when they hit the shallows, those fish have not seen lures in a long time. You can catch them on almost anything in the right situation, but there are a handful of baits that consistently catch the giants. And that's what I want to talk to you about, because it's not a bunch of complicated baits. It's some of these are things you probably already have in your box. It's really simple, but there are key baits in the mix that before they spawn, the giants just fall for. So let's jump right into it. The first one, now I'm just gonna get this one out of the way, because I'm gonna tell you point blank, when I go north, the A-rig is not my favorite thing to throw. It's just not. It's not why I come up here. When I go north, it's because I wanna pick up those spinning rods, pick up that BFS rod, and just lean on those fish on light line. Now that said, I still acknowledge that every year, some of the biggest smallmouth in the north are caught on an A-rig in the pre-spawn. So you just need to know that. If you're tournament fishing, if you're searching for that true fish of a lifetime, the A-rig should be on your deck. I should also tell you, the Tactical Flex rigs, the bladed is finally in stock on TW. So I'm gonna link all these baits for you down in the video description. Along with colors, whatever rigging we might use for them, all that stuff. But I'll also link you the A-rig, which is finally actually available, which is awesome. But the A-rig is a major player. That's one of the 5. I love throwing an A-rig. I love targeting giant largemouth with an A-rig, but when I go north, not my thing. I come up here for the 5-pound, the 6-pound, the 7-pound line up against the 5 and the 6-pound smallmouth. I just think that's amazing. Now, next up, so first category A-rig, I'm giving you 5. Second, tubes. Now the tube, everything after the tube is going to be reaction, okay? The tube is an interesting one for me. Look how chewed up this tube is. Remember just a couple of weeks ago, like I said, we've been here a couple days already. Remember a couple weeks ago, I talked to you about this tube in a gear review, and I just said, if you knew, you knew. That color was going to get mangled up north. It is getting mangled up north. But there are 3 main tubes that I'm throwing when I'm targeting these fish. Everything is going to be fatter bodied tubes. I like to imitate gobies when I'm up north. I think a tube is a great goby imitator. But even in the inland fisheries, the places that don't have gobies, those fat tubes just seem to work really well. So in no particular order, this is the STH tube. Now it comes in this size and it comes in a little guy. This size, see how long the tails are? you can cut them to length. So here's that one that was destroyed. You can tell I had trimmed those legs down and then the fish trimmed them a little further, but you can cut that tube down to any size. In fact, here's a little one right here. There's the little guy. Just a little tiny dude. So that's that one. This is the big bite. And I'll link my favorite colors for each one of them. But the big bite, this one is ultra, ultra soft and crazy salty. Like think original Senko salty, where you start rubbing it and the salt just starts pouring out of the body of that bait. Works really well. And then the last one is this one. This is the Savage Gear Goby tube. It's hopefully you can see the profile. It's actually got molded fins on the sides and the top, and it's got a little Goby face molded in it. But look at this. Here, I had one rigged up. That top fin all but protects that hook. And I just think that is the slickest profile up here on the big water. So that is one that I hadn't played with before. I've been playing with all three the last few days. These two have been my bread and butter here for a bit. I added that one in. All three of them have just been smashing. But the tube is a special bait because, and again, if you guys follow us, you've been with us over the years, you've seen us do this before. We use a tube to hunt these big smallmouth. So the average Joe gets up on the bank and just goes along fishing, right? Whatever you catch, you catch. Up here, a lot of the water is clear. We're talking 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 foot of viz, 30 foot of viz, 40 plus feet of visibility. You can see these fish and these fish can see you. So we drop down to that 5 and 6 pound line. And in the pre-spawn, this is important because there are a ton of baits that could catch these fish. I'm using all reaction baits. Now, the tube, not a true reaction bait. But the reason it's in the category is because we're using it to hunt the fish. So in that clear water, I'm actually physically looking for a big smallmouth. And if I see one, and I see it before it sees me, I'll make a bomber cast on light line, shoot that tube way out ahead of that fish, let it go to bottom, and then work it. And if, say the fish is here, and I see him, so I'm behind him, I don't throw right in front of him, okay? I throw off to a side, and then I work parallel until that fish turns and sees the tube and comes to it. So I'm using it like a reaction bait where I'm actually hunting the fish. And then even if those fish bust me, sometimes where they start taking off across those flats, you know, if you chase smallmouth in the north, the flats can go on forever. And those smallmouth that just start out across those flats, you can make a bomber cast with that tube and lead them. Same thing, you can get those fish to stop and eat that bait, and it is just amazing. So the reason why a tube makes the cut when a Ned rig doesn't, or a drop shot doesn't, or some of these other great finesse baits, is because I'm not truly using it as a finesse bait in the pre-spawn. Yes, I'm fishing it on light line. Yes, it is finesse, but I'm using it to hunt those big ones. And on that note, I actually use a very specific hook this time of year. We talked about it last year. Obviously can't see the head inside there, but the hook that's in here is a very heavy wire hook, but it's small. Okay, in my smallest tubes, I use a 1/0 hook. In the rest of them and all these other tubes, I use the 2/0 hook. So it's typically a 1/8 ounce 2/0, but I'll link that exact hook for you because it's a heavy wire hook. So I can still set it on 5, 6, 7 pound line, but those fish are never, ever bending that hook out. Even if I hit them on 10 or 12 pound line, they're never bending that hook out. And that is a big deal when you're chasing, again, massive smallmouth. At any time, you could come around a corner and be interacting with a true fish of a lifetime. So we've got the A-rig, we've got tubes, 3 more categories. Quick little spoiler alert for you. It's gonna be hair jigs, swim baits, and there's a variety of swim baits, and jerk baits, okay? Hair jig. Look at this crazy box. Yep, true hair jigs, hair flies, if you will. Look at all the marabou in that box. Pretty obvious what my favorite color is. The hair jig, I think, is one of the most overlooked baits for great big smallmouth. Now, that's not to say that guys in the north don't know about it. Oh, they all know about it and they all do it. But a lot of the people that drive up, because Wisconsin, Michigan, New York, these are all destination states, just like Florida is in the middle of winter, where guys drive to Florida from all over the place. They snowbird down there to get away from the weather. Same thing happens up here. Guys from the south drive up here, one, to get away from the weather, and two, to chase great big smallmouth, as well as some of the other species. So guys that are up here are throwing hair jigs. A lot of the people that come up to visit overlook it. There's a couple of good ones that are widely available, but essentially it's a big fluffy marabou jig. Now when you get it in the water, it does not look like a puffball, okay? It slims down to just about nothing, just a straight shot in the water, and that hair just sort of flows, okay? Almost like a swim bait would kick, that hair has this really natural flow in the water. We fish this as if it is a swim bait. Throw it out, mid-column, wind it back, and those smallmouth just come up and pound on it. It's amazing. And that is one of those baits that is overlooked by a lot of people. And I catch every year some of my biggest smallmouth on it. And I just have a blast doing it. Now, I have to admit, I've never, don't ask me why, I've never thrown the little hair jig for spotted bass. I've just never tried. But I would imagine same thing applies. But with these smallmouth, it's something special. I think, so there's a lot of leeches in the water up here. I think it imitates a leech running across those flats. Those smallmouth are used to eating those things. That's what I think it is. But regardless, whatever it is that they think it is, they pound on them. They come in a few colors. Black is obviously my favorite, but it's just a really, really fun way to catch them. Now, fishing a hair jig can be a pain, I'll just tell you, because most of them are a 16th ounce. At the heaviest, you're throwing an 1/8 of an ounce. So getting the distance out of them in clear water can be really tough. And that is where this rod has come into play. So every year when I'm north, I'm experimenting, trying to find the perfect hair jig rod. And I think I finally got it. We just talked about this little rod in the last gear review. This is the Baby Plugging. It's a Megabass P5. So that's the Megabass's JDM destroyers came over here as the Megabass P5 series of rods. This little guy is called the Baby Plugging. He's 7'2", I believe. Yes, 7'2", but it's rated 3/32 to 7/16. It's rated for 3 to 6 pound line. It is a soft noodle of a rod. Now, why does that matter? Here's why it matters. I've got it paired up. I've got it on a Vanford 1000, okay, with 5 pound fluorocarbon. 1000 size reel, the Baby Plugging. I am shooting a hair jig almost as far as I could throw a 1/2 ounce dark sleeper or Kitech. I'm getting true distance out of it on the flats. And if you are a hair jigger, if you're a guy that throws the hair every year, you know what a, that one is just flat worn out. You know how tough it is to get distance. So I've thrown it on a lot of longer rods, really light rods. This is the first time where I've been like, okay, that is now a dedicated combo. That is my hair jig combo from here going forward. The Baby Plugging is available. You can get them on Tackle Warehouse right now. Vanfords are on back order, but you can still order them. You can actually get in line for those. I did see that the Twin Power in a 1000 size is currently available. So if a guy needed a high-end hair jigging combo right now, you can get a Baby Plugging and a 1000 size Twin Power, and then you are set up. But again, I'll link all that down in the video description for you. But I get geeked out on some of that high-end gear. I get geeked out on ultra finesse gear when I'm smallmouth fishing, and I know other people do too. So when I find a combo that's just dialed, I'm so excited about that rod. I've been having a blast just leaning on those fish because I'm getting incredible distance, but I'm also hitting them on 5-pound fluoro. And these are big smallmouth, but that rod loads all the way up and you just let them pull. Man, it's fun. All right, before I get too sidetracked, we've got 2 more categories. The swim bait category, then jerk baits. Swim bait, I've got 3 different baits here, okay? But in general, little finesse swim baits are the deal this time of year. They just flat catch fish. Again, when these fish move up, they come into the pre-spawn, they move up onto the flats, they start to feed. They're in schools a lot of the time. These fish have not seen lures in months. They don't see lures in the wintertime. They're under the ice. They don't see a lot of lures in the fall. A lot of the people that come up come in the spring into the summer and then they leave. So a lot of the fall, these smallmouth don't even see a lure. Wintertime, they're protected. The beginning of spring, they're protected, and then they pop up and there you are. So those fish get really aggressive and they like to run down a meal. So my swim baits, I keep it simple. It's basically a 3 bait deal, okay? And it comes down to where I am and whether or not I've got wind. It's really what it boils down to. If I'm out on the big water, my number 1, no question, and what I mean is if I'm on the Great Lakes, if I'm actually out on the big bodies of water, the dark sleeper, the Megabass dark sleeper is the deal. I mean, it looks like a goby and those fish respond to it like they respond to nothing else. They just brutalize the dark sleeper. I just retire bait after bait after bait when we're up here because they're just chewed to pieces. And it's not that they don't hold up. You'll be 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 fish on one dark sleeper and it is just hanging on by a thread. And you're like, all right, I'm gonna cut that one off before a fish steals it from me because that represents a lot of hard work. Then you get a fresh one out, you start all over again. But a tip for you with the dark sleeper, I basically have 3 colors that I throw up here a lot. Wagasaki, which is this guy. I throw Donko, here I pulled them out, they're sitting here in packages. So I wanted to show you my favorites. Donko is this guy, which is basically brown with a little bit of gold, and then it's got a little bit of an orange belly to him. And then Haze, which is, I mean, really, I would call it a bluegill imitator, but it's just a general bait fish, little bit of orange shot to it, little bit of that yellowish gold on the chin, some spots on it. It's just a general bait fish. But those 3 colors, Haze, Donko, Wagasaki, those are my colors when I'm up here. If I could only have one up here, Wagasaki. If I could only have one in the lower half of the country, Haze, every time. Now here's the tip though, this is what you need to know. The dark sleeper likes to run because of its body shape. It likes to lift its nose up a little bit, okay? So it's not a bait that dives really hard when you're fishing it. You see how big that flat area is on the belly? It sits flat on bottom. Because that is all flat and tapered up, it wants to rise a little bit coming through the water. So if you are fishing, let's say less than 8 feet of water, and that's kind of a weird number, but that's because these flats can be so expansive, right? So you could be in 8 feet of water and it's not like 8 feet on a slope, it's 8 feet of dead flat water. So let's say anything less than like 1 to 8 feet of water, I'm throwing the 1/2 ounce, which is heavier than I would be throwing in a Kitech, okay? But again, it wants to rise a little, so 1/2 ounce. If I'm like, there's some overlap here, like 6 feet on out, maybe even 5 feet on out, 3/4 ounce, which sounds really heavy, but you've got to trust me on this. This is a bait that fishes much lighter than what it actually is. So the 3-inch in the 1/2 ounce and the 3/4, those are your deal. Those heavier weights cast like a bullet. You can cover incredible distance. I've been throwing it on the, imagine that, the dark sleeper rod while I've been up here. I had to try it out. But in the past, I've done exceptionally well on the X Pride 7.2 Actually, it's the BFS rod is what it is. The X-Pride and the Zodius BFS rods. I've also really enjoyed throwing it on my jerkbait rod, my 610 medium X-Pride. That jerkbait rod is quite a bit lighter than the others, but it's still enough to plant that hook. And I have a blast with that rod. So essentially with a dark sleeper, any medium actioned rod can do it. I like to throw it on fluorocarbon, straight fluoro, because again, I'm throwing it on these expansive flats. It's very different than when I'm fishing at home. Expansive clear water flats where the fish can actually see the braided line going by 20 feet away from them out there in the water, and then they won't swim over. So I fish a lot of either 10 or 12 pound straight fluoro with the dark sleeper, and then it's just when I feel them eat, it's just a wind down and let them have it hook set where you just load it up deep and it sticks that hook and you've got those fish. So big water, dark sleeper. I'm losing light, huh? The camera might even get grainy. I hope it doesn't, but if it does, stick with me. But on the big water, my number one is the dark sleeper. My number two is the Kitech. Now, in the inland lakes where they don't actually have a lot of gobies, my Kitech is number one, dark sleeper is number two. The Kitech, size of head is dictated by wind. Okay, if I've got a chop on the water, this is the Tactical Finesse swimbait head. It's not the Matt Allen head. It's not my head. This is the Tactical Finesse head that Tim and I designed together. See this hook size? Lighter wire, shorter shanked. That's a 3.8 Kitech. It fits perfect in a 3.3, a 3.8, even a 4.3. That's the 3/8 head. That's my standard. That's a 3.8 Kitech again. If there's chop on the water, that's my go-to. 3/8 ounce, 3.8 Kitech. When it lays down and it gets slick like a mirror, I immediately set that down and I go here. That's the little guppy head, okay? And then that's the 4-inch easy shiner. Not the fat swing impact. That's a fat. That's that little easy shiner, just a different body shape. The easy shiner has a little shimmy to it and a nice little tight tail kick. It's not that big wide kick, tight little tail kick. When that water slicks off and looks like a mirror and it's crystal clear, that subtle little tail kick and that body shimmy is the deal. And then you can see how small that hook is in there, right? That's that little 1/8 ounce guppy head. This allows me to throw it on, again, 5, 6, 7 pound fluoro. Crystal clear, slick calm. And then if there's any chop, I immediately go here. The reason why is that I can reach farther, I can cover more water. When they eat it, I'm sticking them on a bigger hook on heavier line. It's identical to the dark sleeper in that I throw it on 10 to 12 pound fluoro and on that same list of rods. Okay, so that is my swim bait system. That's how I adapt to changing conditions and whichever lake that I am in. Finally is the jerkbait. That's the last one if we're narrowing it down to 5. The jerkbait is that bait that can draw a true core reaction, a feed response out of the bass and get them to just absolutely lash out, especially if they are in a school. The jerkbait can be just unbelievable. Now, I like to throw the jerkbait with a chop on the water. You can catch them when it's slick calm, but there's a lot of hardware dangle in there. I definitely do better with a little bit of chop. A lot of times in the afternoon, you get that little ripple coming. That's when it's time to set down your finesse stuff, pick up that reaction, and go to work. But as far as the specific baits, these are two of my favorite colors. Matte skeleton in the 110. These matte finishes, I really like that in the clear water. A lot of times when that water's crystal, if you start throwing a lot of light, a lot of flash, you guys know when we're down south, I've got some baits I love that just shine and throw light everywhere. Up here in that clear water, sometimes those fish will spook off it. Like it's too much flash. It just overloads them and they just let it go. So these matte colors can be really good up here. Now this is a 110. This is the 110 Junior. Again, I'm fishing shallow. So I might throw a plus one, 110 plus one, but typically I'm throwing the regular 110 or the regular junior, not the plus ones, because I'm fishing a lot of times less than 6 or 7 feet of water. So these fish have no problem coming up for these baits. Here, it's just a size thing. If they're not willing to eat the bigger one, I throw the smaller one. If I can see bait fish in the water, like today, I ran into a school of, I don't even know what they were, little emerald shiners, or maybe they were little tiny baby perch that had hatched and just hadn't grown yet. I don't even know what they were, but they were small bait fish. That's when I throw the junior. And this is my favorite color in the junior. Pro blue, but see that shot on the belly? That is everything. I love that extra little bit of color on that bait. Makes all the difference for me up here. Again, I'll link the baits, I'll link my favorite colors. I could go down those tangents forever, and I know we're losing light, and I know I've been talking a long time, but chasing big smallmouth, chasing them on light line is something special. You can catch an absolute fish of a lifetime. Now, I do want to ask you, when you're up here, when you're chasing these fish take a really long time to grow in the cold water. So take care of them. Don't live well a bunch of these fish. In a perfect world, you're not killing these fish. If you want to get a replica, if you want to get a mount of one done, get a replica, turn that fish loose. Because a 5 or a 6 or a 7+ pound smallmouth in the north is so much older than a 6 or a 7 or an 8 or even a 10 or a 12 pound largemouth is in the south. It just takes a really long time for these fish to grow. So be cognizant of that when you're catching these fish. Take care of them, try to keep them in the water as much as you can, get them out, get your photo, get your weight, turn them loose. If you need a replica, get your measurements, but just be careful with the fish. You don't want to be beating them up in live wells. You don't want to drag them all over the place, because again, these are, even the 5 and 6 pounders, these are ancient fish. You've really got to be careful with them. They're much more frail than you think, and it's brutal when you're out there in that clear water and you see great big smallmouth laying dead on the bottom, and you know somebody had the best intentions. They clearly turned them loose, but it just beat them up too much. It just happened. So be cognizant of that when you're up here. It's not like these fish can just instantly replace like they can down in the south. The next spawn doesn't immediately produce 1 pounders that are immediately 2 and 3 and 4 pounds. It just doesn't work that way. It takes time. And in today's world, social media puts a lot of pressure on a lot of fisheries that it didn't used to. So these fish take a beating that they didn't used to take. But again, chasing smallmouth is special. If you get the opportunity, do it. It doesn't matter if you do it up north or down south. Now down south, like Tennessee River has mega smallmouth in it, but it's a different animal. You're throwing spinnerbaits, crankbaits, full-size kitex, top waters. You're treating them more like a largemouth. You're not specifically targeting those giant smallmouth like you are up here. It's just a different animal. So if you get an opportunity, do it. We will be doing a bunch of it over maybe the next month or so. We'll share some of those videos with you. We'll be up here with the families having a good old time, and then we're actually back and forth quite a bit. We'll be down south as well, but we're really looking forward to bringing you guys along. I wanted to get a video out to you on the specific baits so that you could get to those fish in time. If you waited until we're putting the videos out in a week or 2 weeks from now, the transition can already be happening on your lakes and you're behind the times. So I wanted to get you something just as quick as I could right after we got up here, and hopefully this helps you. If it did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, turn on notifications. Our notifications are constantly being turned off. People are not getting the notifications. We know that. I'm sorry. I wish there was something we could do about it. Please know that we post Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whether or not you get the notification. And if you can't find it on YouTube, it is on our website. Everything that we post is there too, so you can always track them down. Full video descriptions, all the links, those are on our website just like they are on YouTube. I hope that helps you. Again, guys, we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.